Happy Friday. We are late today, but there's a reason for that because we're in beautiful Las Vegas. We're at the Resort World, and I got lost on the way here because there's basically a trail of alcohol everywhere. This place is beautiful. I wish y'all were here with me, but for those of you who are not, we have brought Las Vegas to you. I have amazing guests for you today, so tune in. We have some great topics. I want to start by saying thank you to Lean Staffing Group Marketing, all tech, all the Lean folks who are amazing. They made this possible, and they made this Mastermind event possible. I hope y'all can join us next year for those people who are not here this year. For those people who are, we're gonna have a good time. So the first person I would like to introduce you to is like my partner in crime. I'm actually going to go in opposite direction, and I'm sure the techie people are going to be like, Cassandra, what are you doing? Sorry. Is the amazing Justin I want to introduce first because he's my partner in crime at these events. Justin, where are you coming from? Because I can't keep track these days. I feel like you're from everywhere.
The balmy Twin Cities.
Very
As
nice.
said, I think in the same Vegas panel last year, I left, maybe call it 6 degrees to come to 76. I'll take that all day. So thank you for the invitation.
I will. I love it.
Thanks
and I love
Lean,
that city
obviously.
too. And all right, now I guess we'll just go backwards, right? So Mark, could you please introduce yourself? Because you have not been on this podcast before.
I have not had the pleasure before.
Although I would like to tell everybody that I think he tried to avoid it. And that's real talk. Like we were on a meeting and he was like, so how many people need to be on this podcast? And do we have to be on the podcast? So real talk, were you like trying to get out of it?
No, that was strictly a question because I wanted clarity.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm excited to be here. Happy to be here. Happy to join you and meet you for the first time.
Thank you.
I also came here from balmy Twin Cities. Happy to get off the plane and get out without a jacket on and just have a little bit of warmth. It's
and a little
fantastic.
sunshine.
Super appreciative of you to join, invite us and Lean and the entire team there. So.
And do tell us, where do you work? What do you do? All that good jazz.
I'm with CH Robinson. I'm within our surface transportation business, so truckload, LTL, intermodal. And I lead our operations teams, so call it the tactical execution teams within our surface transportation business.
You thrive in that environment, don't you? Can't you just tell, just like hanging out with Mark, you're like, this guy thrives in that kind of operational environment. I love it. All right, now we have Agustin, who you guys have not met or seen yet. He is our new rising star in our industry, I've decided. And welcome. I'm excited to have you here. For those people who do not know you, could you please
Happy to be here.
yourself?
Same as Mark, first time for me. Right, so happy to join you for the show. So I'm the director for logistics with Fluence Energy, right? As we in the energy storage. So 17 years with supply chain and logistics role, I kind of representing the shipper here. So originally from Argentina.
Love it.
Moved to the US a couple of years ago, 6 years ago, and based in Orlando, Florida. So
Very
really
nice.
happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
And I love the accent. It sounds very professional, very great. But I bet you do turn up the accent when you're around women. You can just tell us the truth.
When I used to run.
You're going to in Vegas. He's going to be like, I'm from Argentina.
Took 2 minutes. She's going there.
Yeah.
He's going to be the first one. Yeah. Poor guy. And then my new best friend. Welcome to the team. We actually have somebody here from Amazon, you guys. We're going to get the dark and dirty. We haven't told you yet. But basically, no one is saying anything on this podcast. It's all you to tell us the dark and the dirty with Amazon. So welcome, Hannah. Please introduce yourself. Tell us where you come from, and maybe a little insight into your day-to-day.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Hannah McClellan. I flew in from balmy Boise, Idaho, so also excited to not have to wear socks and enjoy some warmer weather. So thanks so much for the invitation. I've been a huge fan of Mad Games for a long time. Cassandra knows that. So this is a big day, and happy to be here. Let's see. So at Amazon, I'm in charge of kind of 2 big components of our transportation. The first being our inbound transportation. So that's getting all of the inventory from Amazon suppliers into our network. And then the second being what we call Amazon Freight, which is where we took Amazon's logistics and decided to externalize it into a full truckload service provider for any shipper associated with Amazon or not, which helps us, I think, offset our carbon footprint, fill up empty miles, and just bring the power of Amazon into the everyday business owner's hands.
Love it, and the PR team's going to love that. That was like as perfect as it gets right there. Mark, I noticed that you didn't say anything about how you love watching Matt Gaines and wanted to be on Matt Gaines. I noticed that. That was
payback is coming. Is that what we're saying?
Said. So I texted to you guys this post on LinkedIn. And at first, you guys, we were all going to go through these different conversations and about different people's business, which we will. But I think I saw this post. And at first I was like, this guy's a fucking idiot. And then I was like, no, maybe he makes some good points here. Hold on, give me a second. I hope the FreightWaves will show this post. And I want to give you, it's long, so you have to go on LinkedIn and actually look at it, but I'll give you like a little bit of a clip of it. It's by Nick Cleggan-Smith. He said, I have unpopular news for shippers. He posted this on LinkedIn. You are no longer in demand. Oddly capitalized demand. Trucking companies do not need to compete for your business. There are plenty of 3PLs competing for your business, but the trucking companies are not. There are significantly more of you than there are of them. I understand that capacity seasonally has some ups and downs, but this is not seasonal. It's a statistical reality. So he goes into the blah, blah, blah. But he also makes a point, which I thought was interesting. And he said, you're now in a position where you need to compete for their services, yet many shippers are using the exact same procurement strategy and buying criteria that they used 5, even 10 years ago. And then he said, to compete in this market, don't treat your 3PL or broker like a carrier. Give them what they need to do to work for you, advocate for you, to consult for you, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, he works for 3PL. And then naturally, all his little friends were commenting on here saying, yeah, go carriers, go 3PLs. And then some idiot from TQL reposted this. And I was like, God, stop. So at first, I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. What are we doing here? But he did make some interesting points when he was oddly went about it, but he made some interesting points. So let's start with Mark, the one who's been avoiding the podcast.
I don't know where that comes from. I had to go to his room and knock on the door to get some.
And he was like, let me go, Justin. So Mark, what were your thoughts? Because I texted it to everybody because they're busy. They don't have time for this LinkedIn crap. And I'm always on LinkedIn.
So I don't know this gentleman. I probably wouldn't have articulated the point the same way. But there is some truth in the idea. And, as we've navigated the last several years of a whole host of different issues, pandemic being one of them, and a whole host of other things that have followed on from that, capacity shortages, supply chains being entirely disrupted, e-commerce continuing to accelerate in growth, that changing the way in which supply chains execute, more frequent shipments, shorter miles, a whole host of things. What has evolved is shippers starting to understand, and not starting to understand, they are really understanding the fact that their supply chains are not performing the way they want them to or the way they expect them to. Mm-hmm. And the way they have started to solve those challenges is by trying to be a better collaborative partner. And I know that's the case with us, with our customers. They've worked towards becoming better collaborative partners, and that's something we've always desired. So it's about developing common understandings of what are the problems, what are we trying to solve for, understanding why are those problems the case, what are we doing, whether we're a 3PL, whether we're a carrier, whether we're a shipper, what are we doing that is causing each other pain, and how can we solve those in a more intentional manner. And that could be things like understanding their RFQ or quoting process to be able to understand whether those things are even accurate and reflect what they're actually asking for or not. Mm-hmm. Sharing information about what's changing across the landscape, getting into a collaborative space and whiteboarding out how we're going to solve this problem or the next one, use technology, use people, use whatever it is that's at our disposal to achieve the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, as well as understand the idea that we may want to plan for something that's static, but we know it's not going to be. And we've got to figure out how we are nimble together.
How many shippers are open to having that type of conversation, though?
I would tell you in 10 years ago, it was almost zero. Today, 3/4.
Damn. What do you think?
It could be even higher than that. I would say if you can come to the table and say, hey, we want to engage this problem together, there is far more openness to be able to do that today than there ever has been.
It's a bit aspirational, though. So the desire is there. I agree with Mark.
Yeah,
There's
it's got to
probably
evolve.
More than 75% definitely aspire to be collaborative and establish best partnerships, be it with 3PLs or 4PLs, with orders or carriers. The problem is like, if you took 2010 to 2020, over a 10-year period, rates never fluctuated. We thought ditch to ditch was if they went up 10 points or down 10 points.
Right.
Never have we seen rate fluctuations jump 26% in a calendar year.
Almost 80% since pandemic.
Unbelievable. You got inventory ratios at all-time lows. You've got, naturally the stockpile of vessels sitting outside of ports right now. You couple that with labor issues. You couple that with capacity crunch. There's so many things that are like unavoidable messes that have converged at the same time. My fear is that if a shipper aspires to be very strategic in how they optimize their networks to be able to adapt to all these negative headwinds, but don't put the right people in place to partner with the smart people, like people that, sitting left of me here, that are really smart strategic people, and they've got business intelligence analysts, and they've got all these whippersnappers that can do the data dives, say, hey, we need to do this. We got to think about our order cycles. We got to think about mode optimization, node optimization. That's great, but if the shipper's not going to bring the same mental intelligence to the table, time commitment, treasure commitment, all those things, then it's just aspirational. Nothing's going to change.
I think the other challenge in there is what happens when we go back to a more normal
when that
landscape.
pendulum swings right
go
back the other way.
And I think, in my mind, it's incumbent upon carriers, 3PLs, service providers in general to make sure we are delivering the value that we can promise in these scenarios, to make sure that we don't go back to where we used to be.
I think it's about meaningful conversations, right? How we can make sure that there's integration between the shipper and the partner, right? Partner is sometimes a misused word here. So it's not about contracted rates, right? It's not about having a contract. It's about how you bring this power, this knowledge up front, right? Through the planning stage, right? Who are the partners going to be there with you? You don't need to send an RFQ to 200 carriers, right?
Right.
Then you don't have a piece of the cake for each of them. So how they engage, how they plan, how they invest in R&D with you, right? I think those are, for me, the most important topics. So it's not just the execution, it's how really integrate those partners into your operation. The shippers may not know it all when it comes to planning and the supply chain and so on. You have to bring the experts, right?
Do you feel like the 3PLs and the carriers that you work with, do they listen to you? Do they partner with you?
You have to select the ones that are there for you and also have the good understanding of your expectations. I think it's about, as I said, meaningful discussions, right? You have to understand me, what my requirements are, what my expectations are, and what you can bring. And always having an advocate say, hey, if you cannot bring what we are expecting and you don't feel like you are the right partner, just say it out loud, right? Because that's going to be a win-to-win for both of us, right? Let's have a discussion. Let's have the tender process, the RFQ sent to whatever amount of carriers you want to pick, right? At a later stage. Now let's sit together and let's understand where we're going together, right? So that's for me has been always coming also from the project business. You start developing, right, the projects, the planning stage with your carriers, with your 3PLs, with your partners. You bring them with you, right? It's not just about an RFQ. That's probably the last important thing, right? When you have the whole development with them.
Yeah. And that's probably especially true in the project space because it's so technical.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense. You have an interesting segment of business because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you are often the customer and the carrier.
Yeah, you read my mind. We are all of it, and I think that gives us, they always say like walk a mile in the other guy's shoes, and you'll know how they feel. So I think we we are a shipper. We are a provider of transportation. We are creating the need for that transportation when we place purchase orders to suppliers. And so we're defining how much we're ordering, where it's going to go, how fast we want it here, right? And so I think all those pieces mean that in my job, I'm never just optimizing for transportation, ever. And there's times I would happily spend more on transportation because we're out of stock on something and we need to get it in, and the sales we will generate from getting it in far outweigh the expedited cost. That's just one tiny example. And so I think what we find, like when I on the one hand, I agree with everything that, what was his name, Nick said in his article. Like I do think that's very Amazonian in nature to start with your customer and work backwards. And shippers are one customer, and they are a very powerful customer right now. But I would say that's one slice of it. And so we also, at least are looking really hard at truck drivers, and they're a customer, and there also aren't enough of them. And so what can we as Amazon and Amazon Freight do to make the life of a driver better, so that A, more of them will want to work for Amazon, B, more of them will want to stay in trucking, and more people will want to do it. So I think attacking that whole puzzle. But for me, I think a lot of it comes down to, in order to do what I need to do for Amazon as the leader of inbound transportation, data and visibility is clutch, because I need to be able to tell the supply chain optimization team that's deciding how much to buy and when to where to put it, and I need to be able to give them very clear predictions of what my costs and speed are going to be, so that they can make that optimization. And then once I give it to them, I better hit it, because if not, a bunch of decisions at a very large scale were made based on data that may or may not come true. And then lastly, being able to, I think, be nimble amidst that. So things are always changing, and when they optimized on day one, when they placed that purchase order, by the time the vendors confirmed it and packed it and shipped it, like, things have changed, and maybe we have a huge backlog at one site, and we would actually, it would be way better for us if that truck went somewhere else, and that leads to a desire to kind of control, or at least have as much visibility into all the freight coming into Amazon as we can, such that we can pivot and we can avoid big backlogs at one site, by proactively redirecting upstream. And, so again, I can't do any of that if I don't know what's on the truck, where the truck is, and can't get in touch with that driver and optimize in real time. So I do think that, for us, it's very hard at Amazon to blame one segment, because we're all of them, and any given person in the room can tell you why what you just said actually makes their life harder. And I think we find that transportation at Amazon is often like this big shock absorber, because buildings can't get bigger, and but we can always and so I think we've had to flex up a lot during COVID, as again, as labor was short and backlogs grew, and so our ability to hold freight at an LTL terminal or communicate with shippers upstream that we're going to be late so that they can plan accordingly was a big lesson learned during COVID. And so I do feel for shippers, but, I think I feel for drivers as well. And there's, and to say who the ultimate customer is in this supply chain, I think is tough,
right?
Yeah.
And first of all, just that whole explanation, my mind was like all over the place. You can just see how dynamic her business is.
But should we pick on Amazon?
Absolutely. No, I'm so excited.
Actually, I'm going to offer a genuine compliment. So, as Hannah was speaking, what I thought about was the 3 years I spent as a service provider to Amazon. What Amazon has done to us is they have basically put the whole industry on notice that we're going to hire the smartest people that we can possibly find. The way they value a knowledge worker is fundamentally different than the way 3PLs and even carriers have thought about how they hire. The smartest people they can find, not the people with the longest teeth in transportation, but the people that can problem solve and will not stop until they come up with solutions, be it for the carrier constituency or for the shipper or for their network, for their end customer. They're maniacal. I mean, these folks will work 15-hour days and they will not stop till they achieve the right answer. And so I bring that up, and it maybe is a great segue to me, and it's a shameless plug as I'm on the board of Lean Staffing, but 350 people started to work with Lean Staffing, I think, for one very important reason. There's a boatload of work that is being shed onto the teams that they're augmenting with in Colombia and now in Guatemala and Mexico, because the onshore knowledge workers have to step their game up and start thinking like Amazon, and start thinking about cluster-based analysis, start thinking about freight optimization, start looking at bids like data scientists, not like 3 bids in a cloud of dust or waterfall or some old school 10-year-old methods. Amazon's the one forcing us to do that. So actually, I didn't pick on you, but there are other ways I can pick on Amazon. I'll wait till later to do that.
Like the fact that she drinks sugary Riesling.
Hey, cheers to that.
But we're also going to pick on this too, because why not Chardonnay? It's like in between the Riesling.
I went on a wine tasting thing one time, and they were telling us like how to remember the different kinds of wine. And she said, when you sip a Riesling, it's just sweet, and you can't help but smile, and so it just makes you want to say Riesling, and that you smile when you say Riesling. So
you see, it's hard to pick on her. I just love her so much. Okay, so one thing I want to talk about before, I know that you have a couple questions that are important to ask, but I want to go back because I'm a fire starter like that. But to this post, the tone of this post was more, again, I know more than my customers, and I'm going to tell the customers how they should operate their business and what they're doing wrong. And although the post had made a lot of good points, that tone drives me nuts. I'm somewhat of an outsider because I'm just a lawyer in this industry, and I assist these companies, or I've worked within these companies, but I'm still an outsider. I've never actually sat in that role like a lot of you have. But the tone, why?
Can I have his back real quick, though?
Yeah.
When it was
interested to hear this.
I would never talk to my clients.
Listen, when there was traffic
actually
teams,
I do, but
like genuine logisticians that used to make decisions that could actually mentally empathize with what was going on in the market, because they knew the market, they talked to the carriers every day, they saw the likelihoods of issues and when they needed to bend, when they needed to push. When that department started to get shed from corporate America and transportation got moved into global sourcing and procurement, you had a different mindset. You had an arrogance, a hubris that became reckless. And so I would agree in the sense that there are a number of shippers out there that are completely ignorant to the fact that they understand that this thing is a two-sided negotiation. And there was a long period of time, I'd argue the past decade before the pandemic, where those kind of higher paid procurement types were like, the hell with transportation. You committed this rate, figure it out.
Yeah.
And when there used to be traffic teams, they actually played nice.
Damn.
So it's my views.
That makes
But
a
it's
lot of
also
sense.
when you come about the 3PL market and the carriage market and so on, right? What do you know about the shipper? Which market the shipper is operating, right? Could be, in my case, the energy business, could be retail, could be something else, right? So how you bring that experience that you have as a carrier, as a 3PL, 4PL, you name it, right? And integrate that experience that you bring with the knowledge of the market where that shipper is operating, right?
It's true.
Those customers have totally different expectations and different demands for what you can bring or what you know. Retail is different from, back again, projects or energy or some other sectors, right? So how you integrate all the knowledge and you bring that knowledge together for the sake of partnership, right? So that's for me is the most important.
Especially for your segment of commodities. You're not just water bottles that we can throw any fucking carrier on. You have to be very careful about who you select.
So the complexities of that market and a utility scale, a power generation company, right? A project developer, right? What do they need? What do they expect from a transportation service provider? And back again, if you just get isolated from that, you just know one small niche, right? It doesn't go back to what you're saying about even so developing the talent. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah. So it's football. I don't follow football, but every year Justin helps me with the football conversation. Who is your team, Justin? And do you have any other related questions? Because I'm a soccer person. The real football.
Isn't football?
Football is live.
Soccer.
Who they
football.
Let's go.
Did you just quote Ted Lasso? Oh my God. Okay. This is why I love you. I love you. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, should we just go rapid fire with our picks?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We'll rapid fire our picks real quick.
Except for me. I don't watch football. I don't
I'm
know
going to
who
cheer
else
on the
plays.
Bengals, but I'm actually going to go with the home
Soccer
team.
players
I'm
are
going with the
so
Rams.
sexy. Why
Going with
would
the
you even
Rams.
bother with football?
I'm cheering for the Bengals, but I am not optimistic they will win.
I know, I'm with you.
Don't ask me about football. I'm a soccer guy. I cheer for River Plate in Argentina.
I would do Cincinnati.
Yeah? Look at you go. I do not watch the football, only soccer.
Shame.
You guys, the soccer guys are sexy. The football guys are in tights, covered in whatever. I don't know, I can't even see it. Soccer, they don't need these things. They play the sport, right? We don't need all this equipment. It's such a
How do you
great
feel
sport.
about the diving and the acting component?
I love it.
Really?
Better you go.
Dramatic
Oh,
component.
it's
So
like,
I played soccer my entire life. That was my sport of choice.
how were you with the dramatics, though?
I wasn't one of them.
Really, because the way you tried to get out of this podcast,
Oh, boy.
I mean, it was was really well placed. I figured you were good at that type of dramatics.
It's not cheating.
We're gonna have
We
more.
were delayed by an hour.
That's true. We've been drinking for a while. Okay, so before we close out, Justin, do you have any remaining questions before I close out?
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear CH's and Amazon's take on certain Agustin's take on comparing maybe some of the similarities of, and this is maybe where I'm picking on Amazon.
I love it.
Amazon's building out a world-class logistics and fulfillment network that now they're going to actually start to offer as a service that's going to potentially be a legitimate threat for 3PLs, which is fine. All's fair in competition and war. But when you're subsidized by, your cloud-based business, right? When there's these other components of your business that subsidize, transportation, it's not a fair fight. And I could parallel that to, and I'm in venture and work with ABC, but there's a lot of venture-backed transportation management companies that I think are fine companies and are building out great business models that are great for shippers, but it's not a fair fight because the economic story for those companies is fundamentally different than a publicly held 3PL that's got to report to the street every 90 days. And so I think, it's in the end great for the consumer when you think about rate wars and margin compression and all these things. But when you think about head-to-head combat, it bothers me, A, if you're funded in such a way that showing a profit doesn't matter, or B, you've got sister companies that theoretically can fund your losses. And
Wait. Is the 8VC, that word, VC, guy, is he railing on the Amazon for having other avenues of funding? And wait, back up. What's the exact question? Because it seems a little like I would love to pick on VCs right now.
I'm just saying, if I can run a 3PL at a loss, and I can run a fulfillment network at a loss because I've got sister company. It'd be like if I was Apple and I could sell my iPhones for nothing because I own an oil company that funded the rest of my profits in the business. Like, that's an example of that's not a fair fight. If I'm C.H. Robinson and I do managed transportation and produce and technology, but I've got to show quarterly profits that are growing quarter over quarter, that's a tough battle. It's like, I want his take on, hey, competition is good. And I think venture-backed digital brokers are going to really force us to step our game up, but it's not a fair fight.
Or are they just disrupting our industry and flooding the industry with nonsense money and nonsense?
Listen, when you bring smart people together, you got to watch out. You got to pay attention. But I think the same could be said for Amazon. Like, if Amazon can come in and be a 3PL that runs even at break even, they're going to be tough to beat. And so I'm just curious it's really because they're counter takes. I'd love the Amazon take and the CH take.
Well, I'll take a cut at this. There's never a fair fight, ever. And no one's going to cry for Robinson or anyone else because somebody's well-funded or otherwise. So, what I think is evolving here is really good for the market landscape, right? You've got Amazon doing fantastic things. You've got newer entrants to the marketplace doing fantastic things, which is forcing more legacy providers, and I'll use legacy versus brokers because I think that landscape is a little bit different. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's forcing us and many others to do things that we maybe we didn't used to be comfortable with, right? And so part of that is hiring different types of talent, right? It's data scientists, it's process engineers, it's software engineers, a whole host of a profile of an employee and of teams that didn't used to be the DNA of our teams 10 years ago. It's forcing us into these conversations with customers, with carriers, with our coworkers and our industry collaborators about how do we bring unique value in this landscape of just a flooding of investment, of consolidation, of innovation that's going on across the landscape. It's forcing really good things that we're probably not progressing the way they needed to, 10 years ago.
Right.
And so, there's not a fair fight, and that's okay. We'll continue to do the things that we think are really important to our customers and their carriers. Will we look at what some of the venture-backed folks are doing? Sure, because because they're gaining notoriety because they're solving problems for customers and carriers. We have to look at that, but we also have to listen to our customers and carriers about what's going on. What do they need? What are critical success factors for them? How can we help them achieve those things? So while it may not be a fair fight, while sometimes when we have to report to the street, sometimes those are challenging conversations because of the broader market landscape. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, what we're focused on is trying to deliver great experience for customers and carriers, and for our people internally, mm-hmm. and for the and to be able to help this market innovate new solutions. And that's what we're focused on. And obviously we have to deliver a bottom line result, and we have to deliver growth and all of those things.
Your people are going to love you for that answer.
That's not any different than it used to be.
Did you guys talk about that when you were walking here and he was complaining about me?
If there's an analyst watching, it should be $120.
Yeah, that was good.
Or $150.
And we do love AVC, very much so. I just like to try to get him, pick a fight with him, It's not my fault. I want to pick a fight with him. When you select a provider, does the size of the provider or what they offer, what's important for you?
I think it matters. The size matters because,
well, most women say that, but yes.
Yeah. At the end
you
of the day,
walked right into that. I couldn't let it go. Come on, Hannah. Go ahead.
Right. It's also important for us shippers to leverage the buying power, right, of our partners as well, right? That's why we use brokers, freight forwarders, 3PLs, 4PLs, and so on, right? So for me, that is important. So the question is how these partners, back to Mark's point, are reshaping, right, the way they think, right, the way they behaved, and the technology they use, how they add more value to the operation, not just the regular shipping as we used to have. So yes, the size matters, their footprint matters, their solutions matters most, I would say.
I like that because I feel like I could still, if I was just a small shop in Alabama, I could still provide you a value if I brought you solutions and expertise.
If you come up with a great solution that works for what we have as a project or as an order, as a customer, right? You're gonna be in, right?
I love that. What final thoughts do you have? Besides how inappropriate I am.
Thank you for that thoughtful question.
She's not going to talk to me now tomorrow.
Yeah, you're done.
I think, I would say Amazon got into the transportation business out of frugality. We were serving our customers and our retail consumer business, and we needed a certain level of performance and capacity and cost. And Jeff Bezos always says, frugality breeds resourcefulness, and resourcefulness breeds innovation. And I think you can trace our transportation journey along that line. And so in an effort to serve our business, and transportation is one part of it, we did. I think we've done some awesome thinking and great innovating. And you're right, I wasn't in this business before 2017. That's when so that's what I've got under my belt. And I'm super proud of what we've done. And I think, when we invent things to want to externalize that and make that available to, shippers that aren't shipping with Amazon is a natural thing to do. I would also just say that last time I checked, there is plenty, the premise of this whole conversation was, there's more shippers than there is capacity. So, I think some of the stuff we've done is super cool and innovative. Others of it is just the Amazon playbook of focusing on your customer, and anybody can do that. And so if we can be a forcing function to get more, more transportation providers to do that, I think rising tide raises all boats, and everybody's going to be better for it.
Bring her back.
I know. I freaking love her. She's going to be the next CEO of Amazon. Yeah. I'm ready. I love it. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who couldn't join us here in Las Vegas, make sure to follow Lean Group on all of their social media, and you can catch up on what's going on. We have a big surprise. Tomorrow, I am releasing a beautiful new, I would say, interesting company that will change the way we do business. And I think that Lean also has some great things in place for the next few days. Thank you to FreightWaves for putting all this together along with everybody here at Lean. And we will see you guys next Friday.
Whatever your shipment, no matter the mode of transport, the real-time location and condition of your shipment matters. With Tithe, you simply activate the tracker with the push of a button and secure it on a shipment at the box, pallet, or container level.